Hi everybody, this is the final installment of the class pack videos for the Alternative Firings Horsehair and Feather Raku class series for the month. And hopefully at this point you've made some of the projects that I demonstrated in previous videos and you are ready to burnish. What you want to have is a bone dry piece and some very specific technology. We need a piece of foam to rest our piece on mid-process so that it doesn't get scratched up after we've done some burnishing. This very high-tech burnishing device, you might recognize it as the bane of all sea turtles and whatever. Just a plastic carrier bag, polyethylene, and Terra sigillata. Now, you may not know Terra sigillata. She's great. No, she's not a person. She's a thing. It's a Latin word for sealing earth, T-E-R-R-A, earth, and sigillata from the word that they used for like a wax seal. I knew that Latin in high school would come in handy. So this one is made with New Riverside ochre, which is a mine up in northwest Georgia that's been producing ochre longer than any place else in the country. And we use it in the New Riverside Ceto glaze, and we make this beautiful Terra sigillata. So what is Terra sigillata? It's basically a slip that is created by mixing the slip ingredients together and putting something in there to deflocculate the slip, which means to make it more fluid than its water content would generally indicate. And then we let it settle. And the reason why you settle your Terra sigillata is to get any of the coarser particles to settle to the bottom of the container. And then we siphon off all the super fine stuff. So a term that's often used for Terra sigillata is colloidal slip. Colloidal meaning tiny, tiny, less than 2 micron particles of clay. So because it is so incredibly smooth and fine, it allows us to bring the surface up to a sheen comparable to sort of a satin glaze without ever getting up to those kinds of temperatures where you'd have to melt a glaze. And this is what the Romans used to make their functional pottery food safe, and it basically seals up the pores of the clay and works pretty well. It's not as good as glaze, but before they had kiln technology to produce stoneware pots, this was a pretty cool technology. We make the Terra sigillata by settling. Another term you're going to hear for that is levigation, which is separation by the weight of the particles. The light stuff floats around in the water and gets used, and the heavy stuff gets thrown away. So I'm going to readjust the camera and try to show you how this works. One other kind of nice piece of equipment is a soft brush. Soft bristles are important so you can lay on your material without leaving kind of streaks in the material. And timing is everything. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you how this works. I'm going to set my bag aside, my burnishing tool. They would have used a polished river rock or a polished agate stone or something that was really smooth, but boy, the modern version of this with the plastic bag sure works nice. So I'm going to hold up my piece. This is my African dish. The front of that just bone dry. I want to show you the back. I did a little bit of burnishing just on the bare clay. And I used a smooth stone for that. So if I get it just right in the light, yeah, you can kind of see a little bit of sheen on there. That's what you would do if you wanted to burnish a piece without Terra sigillata, is just catch it at hard leather hard and start rubbing it with a smooth stone. But the Terra Sig gives you such a better surface to burnish because the particles are so fine. So the trick here is you've got a bone dry pot, you've got this wet Terra sigillata, and when you brush it on there, that bone dry pot just slurps all the water out of it right away. So you don't get enough time to get in there and burnish while the surface is still kind of at its own leather hard stage. So what I like to do is coat the whole thing once, let it absorb some of that water, and then put a second coat, maybe even a third coat, in order to have a little bit of a time window to be able to burnish. So let's lay it on there. I'm gonna hold up the African dish project so you can see it as I brush it on. So I'm gonna try to coat an area. I've got my brush loaded up pretty well, and I'm just gonna lay it on You don't want to go back over the area where you're going, but let's just watch how that sucks up the moisture. It goes from being sloppy wet at the bottom to looking leather hard to going to bone dry again, really in a hurry. So I'm going to focus on what I'm doing, talk a little bit less, and just try to get one even coat on the whole top surface. If you have some wet stuff pooling, it's good to kind of try to grab it with your next brush stroke and pull it along somewhere else. You don't want to build up too thick of a layer, or these Terra sigillatas, they are made with clay. They can get thick enough where they'll give you some fit problems and start flaking off. So I'm going all the way around the outside. I'm going to come across the middle again, spread this out, and then it's kind of a timing game. I want to watch it, and as soon as those thicker drips dry down to like a leather hard stage, I want to get in there with my bag and start burnishing. All right, so we're watching. We've got a couple of areas that are still kind of damp, drippy looking, and that's my bad brush technique, but I'm going to get ready with this bag, and I'm going to avoid the one drip that I've got. I'm going to just start rubbing the surface gently with the bag. Going around the edge, waiting for that one little spot in the middle to dry, and then I'm going to start working the center. Doesn't really matter whether you go in circles or strokes back and forth. You just want to gradually start increasing the pressure, and I like to move to a fresh part of the bag for the last little bit of burnishing. Remember, you're dealing with greenware here, so if your piece is fragile, it's real easy to break it doing this. So be gentle, but you kind of work your way up to putting a little heavier buff on there. And check that out. I'm trying to get the light behind it so you can see how shiny and glossy that is. And the cool thing about our process is we're never going to heat this up to a point where that sheen is going to go away. It's just going to stay. And this is going to have that really satisfying, almost like really finely sanded wood. Now you can really see the light from my studio reflecting off of that. Don't panic as it dries. You can see some streaks in the middle, maybe like that are a lighter color. It's all going to go that lighter color as it dries, but it is not going to lose its burnish. There is one thing you can do to screw this up and kill the burnish, and that is getting it wet again. So if you tend to have sweaty hands, this is going to sound ridiculous, but you might want to wear a little pair of cotton gloves while you do this process, because just the moisture in your hands can go ahead and unburnish that surface. Just so you kind of understand the process, what's happening here is you're laying down all these clay particles on the surface. They're the finest of fine, and they're still plate-shaped. Clay particles form in these little sheets. Think of like microscopic version of mica. And what we're trying to do is, mica shines when you see it in the creek bottom because all of the planes of the mineral are lined up in a line. When you lay that Terra sigillata on there, it's very smooth, it's very fine, but it's jumbled. There's no alignment of all those particles in the same plane. But if we catch it while it's still flexible enough to move, just ever so microscopically, you can align all of those clay particles in a single plane, at which point, ooh, shiny. You're gonna get this really cool, reflective, and I'm gonna call it water resistant surface. We're not talking waterproof. If you're gonna use these pots for anything functional, I would treat them as you would a delicate wooden salad bowl. You're not gonna just like throw them in the sink and let them soak up water. But there's nothing toxic about the Terra sigillata. It's just made of clay. And so the only issue with using these is the degree to which they're sealed. I feel really comfortable using them. They use them in indigenous cultures all over the world. You may decide that these are more suitable for your keys or your spare change, or just a decorative, beautiful object. Now, I've ignored the back, so I'm going to take this little piece of foam and put it on the front so that I don't accidentally put my sweaty hands on there, and I can attend to the back. I think if I had gotten a really clean line around the edge with the Terra Sig, I might have just left the back with its natural clay color in the burnish, but I kind of lopped over a little bit and it looks like I transferred a little bit with my finger. So I'm gonna go ahead and add Terra Sig to the back. I'll try to talk a little bit less and just get this done for you. Kind of getting the bulk of the middle. And I'll go around the edge once the brush is a little bit exhausted of material, so that I don't accidentally drip it around to the other side. If you drip fresh Terra Sig on the other side, you're gonna have to re-burnish, and you can find yourself going back and forth and never quite getting done. I'm gonna go on for a second coat. So that's one fairly even coat. I'm gonna put on the middle again, kind of spread it out. It moves a little bit more the second time because it's not sucking it up quite so fast. Going around my edge. Now it's that waiting for that perfect moment when all the drips are dealt with. They're kind of dried down, but it's still looking darker in color, like leather hard. I'm going to start gently kind of working my way up in pressure. Go all the way to the edges. Oh, this is burnishing up really beautifully. I can't wait for you to experience this for yourself for the first time. If you've never done this, it really feels like magic. We don't really think about building a beautiful surface on our pieces with the clay itself. We're always thinking, well, what glaze am I gonna put on that? This is not a glaze at all, it's just more clay. And boy, is that got an incredible sheen. You can almost see the room, you can see the light. That's pretty wowie zowie. I'm gonna turn it over to the front and make sure I didn't drip. And I did not, I still got my pretty sheen there. So now, just put this someplace safe. If you're in the class, go ahead and put it on the black shelving unit that is in the back right-hand corner of the kiln room toward the bottom. There may not be room on the official raku shelves, but if you'll just set it on any of those bottom shelves down there, scoot them away from the edge all the way to the back so more people can add their pieces. If there's taller pieces that won't fit, you can put them up on the very top. You're also gonna find some bags, in fact, a whole bag of bags like this, recycled, that you can take and use to burnish yourself. Not burnish yourself, but you can burnish with them. And yeah, let's get these things all done and we'll get them bisque fired and we're gonna have an amazing time burning horsehair and feathers into the surface of these beautiful sheen covered pots. All right, thanks for watching. Shoot me an email if you've got any questions about it or where things are. The Terra Sigillata is labeled New Riverside Terra Sigillata. It is in the black cupboards above the glaze area, all the way to the right. Be sure to stir them up really well before you use them. They will continue to settle, but they have been decanted and levigated, so you don't have to worry that you're going to be picking up the stuff that you don't want in the Terra Sig. They're good to go. So just stir it up thoroughly and have a go at this process. Don't worry if the first time you try it, you might have to go back and try again. Like everything else in ceramics, it takes some practice, but it definitely has a really cool gee whiz wow factor the first time you try it. So hope you really enjoy it. Thanks.